Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a really well-known book, one that's definitely stirred up some conversations, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
That's right. And we're diving in based on excerpts you, the listener, sent us those key pages with the core lessons, the stories.
Yeah, the anecdotes that make it stick.
Exactly. So our mission today, to really pull out those main ideas. What do the rich, according to these pages, teach about money that's, well, fundamentally different?
It starts with this really interesting setup, doesn't it? The author's childhood. Two dads.
Two very different dads.
One, his biological father, highly educated, government job, the picture of stability, but financially the poor dad, in the book's terms.
And the other, his best friend's dad, an entrepreneur, wealthy, the rich dad.
And these two guys had completely opposite ideas about work, money, life, pretty much everything.
Right. And the author claims he learned from both, seeing how their mindsets shaped their realities. It really sets the stage for this idea that financial education often happens outside the classroom.
Those early lessons can be powerful.
For sure. And he jumps right into a story, doesn't he, about him and his friend Mike wanting to make money.
Yeah, the nickel scheme. They were kids, felt poor, and decided, let's make our own money. Found a science book.
And landed on casting lead nickels, which obviously didn't go over too well.
No, his poor dad caught them, corrected them on the, the illegal part, counterfeiting.
He also praised their initiative, their creativity, told them not to quit on the idea of making money, just maybe find a legal way.
Right. He said just doing something was more than most people manage. It's that first little hint of a different approach.
And then Rich Dad steps in, agrees to teach them, but not like you'd expect.
Definitely not. Which brings us right to that first big, maybe controversial lesson from the sources. The rich don't work for money.
Yeah, this one catches people. So Rich Dad hires them for his store, paying them, what was it, 10 cents an hour?
Something ridiculously low. And the author, after a few weeks, he's just had it, feels like a total slave, right? Wants out.
And that's when Rich Dad pulls the rug out, reveals the low pay, which then becomes no pay. It was all intentional, a course.
He wanted to push them, make them frustrated enough to actually listen and think differently, to change themselves, not just blame him or the low pay.
Which is a huge flip. Most people want the boss, the job, the system to change. He's saying, no, you need to change how you think.
He compares it to his poor dad, the educated one, who believed in getting a good job to make money. School taught him how to work for it.
But not really about it, not how it works.
Rich Dad's alternative. Learn how to have money work for you.
And he admits that's harder. Because, according to the source, fear plays a huge role for most people when it comes to money.
Oh, yeah. Fear of bills, fear of getting fired, not having enough, starting over, all that stuff.
That fear, combined with the desire for nicer things, the source calls it greed, creates this trap. It keeps people showing up to a job they might even hate.
Making them, as the source puts it, kind of like slaves to money.
And that whole cycle, that's the rat race.
Get up, go to work, pay bills, get up, go to work, pay bills, over and over.
Fear makes you work hard. Then you get paid, desire kicks in, you spend it often on things that don't make you money.
Liabilities, we'll get to that.
Right, and then the fear comes back because the money's gone, so you work harder, maybe get a raise, spend more.
It's a cycle, a trap. And Rich Dad's goal in these sources wasn't just making them rich, it was teaching them to understand those emotions, fear and desire.
To use them, not be controlled by them. Because if you don't, even if you get rich, you're just a, quote, highly paid slave, still run by the same impulses.
The source even makes a bigger point, linking this kind of financial ignorance, this cycle, to wider societal problems, rising costs, taxes, the wealth gap.
Yeah, it presents it as a serious potential issue, historically speaking. Financial illiteracy isn't just personal.
Okay, so if the rat race is the problem, fueled by fear and desire and working for money, what's the solution? Lesson 2, financial literacy. And the core idea.
It's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep.
That's the key. And the examples are stark, aren't they?
Yeah.
Lottery winners going broke.
Pro athletes earning millions, ending up with nothing. That story of the basketball player at the car wash.
Wow. They made a ton, but didn't know how to hold on to it or grow it.
So the get-rich-quick answer, according to Rich Dad in these pages, it's not a hot stock tip.
No. It's be financially literate, understand the rules.
And rule number 1, know the difference between an asset and a liability. And then
buy assets. Sounds simple.
Deceptively simple, because the source argues most people, even educated people, get this wrong. They buy liabilities thinking they're assets.
So what are rich dad's definitions? Really straightforward.
An asset puts money in your pocket.
A liability takes money out of your pocket.
That's it. It's all about the direction of cash flow. The sources apparently had diagrams showing this. Money flows to you from assets, away from you for liabilities.
And financial struggle often comes down to not getting this. Illiteracy with numbers, with cash flow.
Yeah. And the book uses the middle class as a prime example of this confusion.
Right, that typical pattern. Income comes in.
And goes right back out. Expenses, liabilities. The source paints that picture. Couple works hard, good jobs, income goes up.
But so do taxes. Bracket creep, they call it.
They use credit cards, maybe get a home equity loan. And the big one, they believe their house is their primary asset.
And that mortgage interest deduction feels like a win.
Exactly. But the book really pushes back on this. It argues your house is mostly a liability.
Because money flows out constantly. Mortgage, property taxes, insurance, repairs.
Plus, your money is tied up. It could be working for you somewhere else in an actual income-producing asset, and houses don't always go up in value.
The book mentions examples, like parents squeezed by rising property taxes in retirement, or people owing more than their house is worth. It happens.
So that pattern job focus, accumulating liabilities you think are assets, that's what keeps people in the rat race. Dependent on the job, living paycheck to paycheck, maybe with nicer stuff, but still precarious.
It also introduces a different definition of wealth, from Buckminster Fuller that Rich Dad apparently liked.
Right. Wealth isn't just net worth, assets minus liabilities on paper, which might include stuff that doesn't earn you anything.
Wealth is measured in time. How long could you survive if you stopped working today?
Yeah.
Based purely on the income your assets generate.
That shifts the goal entirely towards financial freedom, passive income covering your expenses.
Okay, so understand the trap. No assets from liabilities. What next? Lesson 3. Mind your own business.
This sounds weird at first, right? Isn't my job my business?
Not in this context. The source says the secret is the rich focus on their asset column. Everyone else focuses on their income statement, their paycheck.
Your profession pays the bills, maybe, but your business is building assets.
The Ray McDonald story illustrates this perfectly. He wasn't just in the hamburger business.
He was in the real estate business, owning the land under the franchises. That was his real business, his asset column.
And Rich Dad taught the author and Mike this early on with that comic book library.
Yeah, that little library was their business. It was an asset-generating income, separate from them trading their time.
That's the goal. Build and protect that asset column. Make your dollars into employees working for you.
And then you buy the luxuries. That's a key point. Rich people, according to the source, buy luxuries last with asset income.
Poor and middle class often buy them first, maybe on credit, trying to look rich, but just adding liabilities.
Builds the engine first, then enjoy the ride. Makes sense.
Okay, lesson 4 gets to more complex territory. Taxes, corporations, playing the game smart.
Yeah, the source uses the Robin Hood story. Take from the rich, give to the poor.
But Rich Dad's view, as presented, is that Robin Hood was, well, a crook. And that whole idea ended up hurting the middle class most with taxes.
The history bit is interesting. Income tax, corporate tax, initially aimed just at the wealthy.
But government appetite for money grew, and the tax base expanded downwards to the very people who might have voted for it initially.
And the rich. They already understood structures like corporations, which, the source notes, were around way before income tax for things like limiting risk on shipping voyages.
So they used corporations to their advantage in the tax game. The key difference highlighted.
Cash flow and timing. An employee earns, gets taxed first, then spends what's left.
A corporation legally earns, spends on business expenses, first travel, cars, meals, stuff an employee pays for with after-tax money.
And then gets taxed on the profit that remains. It's presented as a huge structural advantage.
Plus other legal tools, like the 1031 exchange for real estate, delaying taxes.
Right. It's about understanding the rules, which leads to building your financial IQ.
The sources break this down into 4 main parts. What are they?
Okay, first, accounting. Financial literacy. Reading the numbers, understanding statements, seeing a business's health in the figures. Kind of the left brain stuff.
Got it. Second.
Investing. The science of money making money, strategies, formulas, more right brain creative thinking involved here too.
Third.
Understanding markets, supply and demand. Knowing the difference between, say, a market driven by emotion, the technical side, versus one driven by fundamentals, the economics.
And fourth.
The law. Understanding taxes, corporate advantages, legal protections, knowing how to use the system legally.
And the argument is Combining these four, that's where real wealth building happens. Much faster than just earning a salary.
Especially using the leverage of corporations. The source suggests we're in a time of huge change, lots of opportunity, but you need this financial IQ. Information is the new wealth, and it moves fast.
Sticking to old ideas, like just work hard and save, might actually be a liability now.
Exactly. Yesterday's asset could be today's liability if you don't adapt.
But let's face it, changing how you think isn't just about learning rules. There are internal hurdles, emotion.
Big time. The sources talk a lot about overcoming fear and, maybe even more importantly, cynicism.
Like chicken little voice inside, the doubt.
Yeah. The sky is falling. That voice keeps people out of opportunities. Savvy investors, the book argues, often act when others are fearful. They see deals when everyone else is panicking.
Like that story of the guy who backed out of buying a condo because his neighbor, who knew nothing about investing, filled his head with doubt. Costly doubt.
Or people calling something like tax lien certificates risky without really understanding them just because it sounds different. That doubt costs potential returns.
And the classic, I don't want to fix toilets excuse for avoiding rental properties.
The source calls that noise. Focusing on a small, manageable task to avoid the bigger challenge and goal. Criticizing instead of analyzing. Missing the potential forest for one potentially leaky tree.
It's easy to get bogged down. The sources also mention overcoming laziness, often hidden by being too busy, and arrogance, which often masks ignorance.
So mastering your internal state is just as vital as learning the external rules.
Okay, so for someone listening thinking, all right, I get the concepts, but where do I even start? The sources offer some practical steps.
Yeah, they do. First is the power of choice. Every dollar you get, you choose what to do with it. Spend it, save it, or use it to buy an asset. Your spending habits basically reveal your financial path.
Choose to be rich by choosing to acquire assets. And lack of money isn't an excuse not to learn.
Right. Then, power of association. Choose your friends, your circle, wisely. Not necessarily for their money, but for their mindset. Learn from people who discuss ideas, investments, opportunities.
Notice who talks about making money versus who just complains about not having enough or asks for loans.
Absolutely. Next, master a formula, then learn a new one. Keep learning. The world changes. What worked before might not work now. It's about adaptability and speed of learning, not just sticking to the old work hard formula.
And a huge one, pay yourself first.
Classic principle comes from the richest man in Babylon.
When it takes
First slice goes to your discipline. The sources say this discipline is a major separator.
the ideal flow they describe. Income comes in. First slice goes to your asset column. Then you pay bills, taxes, everyone else.
Most people do the reverse. Pay everyone else first and hope there's something left for themselves. Usually there isn't much.
Also, pay your brokers well. This feels wrong if you're trying to save, but
The argument is good advisors, lawyers, accountants, brokers are worth it. They bring you information, deals, save you time, save you from mistakes. Their value far outweighs their fees, if they're good.
trying to cheap out on advice can cost you way more in the long run.
Definitely. Then there's the interesting one. Be an Indian giver. Okay, the term is dated, but the concept is about sophisticated investing.
Meaning,
Focus on getting your initial investment capital back quickly. ROI, return on investment, is good, but return of investment is crucial. Get your seed money back, then the asset keeps producing profit, essentially for free from that point.
like that foreclosure condo example again. Get your purchase price back via rent in a few years, then it's pure cash flow on money you already recovered.
You play with the house's money, so to speak. Losses happen, but you structure deals to limit them. It's a different risk calculation than just saving.
And reinforcing the earlier point, use assets to buy luxuries. Luxuries are the reward paid for by your assets working for you.
Not bought by going into debt or using your paycheck. Use desire as motivation to build the asset engine first.
Choose heroes too. Find investors, entrepreneurs you admire.
Yeah, learn from them, emulate them, makes challenging goals seem more possible.
And finally, teach and you shall receive. The power of giving. Give what you want to get.
If you want knowledge, teach it. If you want money, give some away thoughtfully. It also stresses being good at selling and marketing vital skills, often blocked by fear of rejection.
Beyond the steps, there's also this theme about education, and maybe traditional school not being the only path, especially for this kind of financial thinking.
Right. The source talks about developing the whole person, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual.
Traditional school focuses heavily on the mental, right? Grades, degrees, getting a job, preparing you for the E employee or S self-employed side of things.
But the B, business owner, and I, investor quadrants, require different skills, different emotional fortitude, maybe even a different spirit, embracing risk, learning from failure.
Which might be why some famous entrepreneurs dropped out school was actually hindering them, crushing that spirit with its focus on avoiding mistakes.
Exactly. And that's where the Cash XIBL game comes in, as described in the source. It's designed as an educational tool for the whole person.
Lets you make mistakes with play money, learn experientially about assets, liabilities, cash flow without real-world consequences.
It simulates the financial journey. And that final analogy, the two bucket movers,
Ed, hauling buckets back and forth forever.
versus Bill, who takes the time to build a pipeline.
One works for money, income tied to effort. The other builds a system, an asset, that delivers money passively. ES versus BI thinking.
That really sums up the core difference in philosophy presented.
So bringing this all together from these sources,
Mhm.
what's the final takeaway?
Fundamentally, it's that financial intelligence lets you turn the money you earn from your job, your active work, into passive income from assets. It's that shift.
Stop just working for money. Start learning how to make money work for you.
And the sources insist opportunities are everywhere, constantly. But you need the mindset, the financial literacy, to even see them, let alone act on them.
It requires changing your attitude, committing to learning, managing your emotions, managing risk, and, actually doing something.
It definitely challenges conventional thinking, and like you said, it has its critics. But these sources lay out a compelling argument for a different approach to wealth.
Yeah, building this kind of financial intelligence, shifting these deep-seated beliefs about money, it's not necessarily easy, but the potential payoff described freedom, security, control is huge. So maybe the thought to leave you with is, how could you start shifting your focus, even just a little today, away from only working for money and towards learning how money can work for you? What's one small thing you can learn more about?